Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's video. Have you ever thought to yourself, hey, I'd love to try astrophotography? But the answer to your own question was, but it looks too complicated. In this video, I'll show you how a smart telescope, like this Vespera II by Vaonis, may be exactly what you've been looking for all this time. My name is Simon d'Entremont, and I'm a professional nature and wildlife photographer living in Eastern Canada. I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. Now, something not many of you know about my photography journey is that my very first foray into photography was to take photos of the stars. Yes, I am an astronomy nerd, and I've owned several telescopes over the years and love taking astrophotos, like these. I have a real telescope and telescope mounts, and I have taken astrophotos with my wildlife photography gear, like this shot of Andromeda Galaxy with my 500mm f4 lens and a DSLR. Now the challenge is, astrophotography setups are big, heavy, complicated, and usually involve learning words like declination and meridian flip. Because it's such a pain, I just haven't been doing much astrophotography in the last few years. But when Vaonis contacted me and said, would you like to try out our new smart telescope that's portable and easy to use, that really got my attention. And I thought you might be interested because my sense was, this is perfect for photographers who want beautiful deep sky photos without a PhD in astronomy. So today's video is sponsored by Vaonis, the creators of the Vespera II X Edition. This clever little astrophotography robot that I've been putting through its paces over several weeks now. I'm going to show you what it's like to use and also real images that I got from it. If you've never seen one of these before, imagine a telescope combined with a star tracker, a camera, a computer, an image processor, and a personal assistant who never gets tired. All packed into a device the size of a toaster oven. It aligns itself, picks stars, tracks, stacks, processes, and you watch your nebula slowly grow on your screen like it's a cosmic Polaroid. It's honestly delightful. Let's look at this telescope. First, what does it come with? It comes with a main unit with a movable arm and a tripod, and a very good quality one at that. The scope within it has an aperture of 50mm and a focal length of 250mm, making it an f/5 focal ratio. The sensor in it is the well-respected Sony IMX585 color camera with a resolution of 3840 by 2160, making it 8.3 megapixels. In case you're thinking this is a low resolution, this is common in astrophotography cameras because the small sensor, like a crop sensor camera, gives you more reach. In fact, the field of view is 2.5 by 1.4 degrees, the same as an 850mm lens on a full-frame camera. Now, if you don't do astrophotography, the following may not wow you, but for astrophotographers, it will. The scope is a quadruplet apochromatic design using FPL52 extra low dispersion glass. In the astro world, this is premium glass and a premium design scope, and certainly surprising to find in what we'd call a compact smart telescope. The internal battery lasts for 4 hours, but it's easily boosted by plugging a battery pack into the USB-C charging port, which you can do while it's running. By plugging my Jackery lithium-ion battery, it would stay charged at 100% all night and keep shooting as long as I wanted. But 4 hours will often be enough for a night's outing. This even has a temperature and hygrometer sensors and a built-in dew heater. For those of you experienced in astrophotography, this is critical. In this time-lapse, dew and frost quickly ruined my time-lapse. But the Vespera II X Edition kept shooting all night, no problem. The internal memory is 25 gigabytes, so it would be common to download images from a night's photography session to free up memory for the next night. You can get solar filters and light pollution filters for it too. So you can photograph sunspots and shoot under light polluted skies. And the whole thing weighs only 5 kilograms or 11 or 12 pounds. They're manufactured in France and feels really premium. Now the way you control the scope is via the app called Singularity. I usually hate learning new software, but this one was very intuitive and quite easy to use. The app has lots of great features like showing you the weather because you need clear skies, and the moon phase because a new moon will give you best results. It has a great section for finding targets and even shows you ones that are in the sky versus hidden below the horizon, and even recommends targets for you to photograph. Now let's look into taking photos with it. But first I have to explain how astrophotos are actually taken, so these features make sense for those who aren't used to astrophotography. Astronomical objects outside the sun, moon, and planets are dim, very dim in the sky. So astrophotography needs long exposures, often hours of exposures to make up one photo. And one exposure of 2 hours would heat up the sensor too much, and the sky would rotate so that your photo would be very blurry. So the workaround for this is that astrophotography is done by having the telescope follow the rotation of the sky and take many photos of short duration, which are stacked digitally together to improve the quality. The longer you collect photons, the better. Now some mounts can be arranged to have one axis match the axis of the Earth, so as the Earth spins, it rotates slowly to match it. These are called equatorial mounts. I have one of those. It can carry a big 20-kilogram telescope, but it weighs 35 kilograms or 75 pounds. Now this one doesn't work the same way. It's called an alt-as mount. It just moves up and down, right and left. But since objects in the sky move and rotate, the Vespera II takes short 10-second exposures so objects don't move or rotate too much. Now the best part, it stacks them together live on the app so you can watch your image take shape right on the screen. It keeps adding the photos and you can watch your image grow. It's really cool to watch. So using the Singularity app, you pick a target. You can just pick one and start right away, or you can use the Plan My Night tool to plan out the night's photography. You just pick a handful of targets and line them up for what time you'd like to start and finish shooting them. You would line these up based on what is rising above the eastern horizon or setting below the western horizon as the night goes on. The app actually tells you which ones are up. So the first thing you do is let the scope know where you are. This is important for it to know how the sky moves where you live. Now you place your scope somewhere solid, I wouldn't put it on grass for example, and start up the device with a simple button push. And hit the initialize button. You don't need to polar align the scope or anything. You just plop it on the ground. The first step for the scope is to find the stars in the sky and understand the orientation of where the stars are compared to your location. We call this plate solving in the astrophotography world. After it finds a few stars and star shapes that it knows here, here, and here, it pretty well knows where it is. Then it autofocuses on the stars and makes sure your photos are sharp. I guarantee you that having this step automated, focusing, compared to manually doing it is worth its weight in gold compared to the traditional astrophotography style of doing it, which is painful. And it refocuses regularly during the night. Another bonus. Then you pick a target or launch your pre-planned night's photography. The scope then slews to your target and starts shooting, showing you the accumulation of short exposures on the app screen. Astro objects vary in brightness quite a bit, so some take longer than others to get enough signal to show a nice image. Some look great with only 20 minutes, others look better with an hour or two of exposures. The app will recommend how long you need, but going longer will be better, but eventually with diminishing returns. When you're happy with what you've got, save the image in the app or in the scope's memory. For longer exposure times over several nights, there's even a multi-night mode so you can keep going from a previous night's session. Now getting high quality astro images is all about signal to noise ratio. See how with only one image, how noisy it is? That's because the noise is always present, but there's not enough signal to drown it out. But notice as the number of images increases, the noise is eventually overwhelmed and drowned out by the photons coming from your target. The image gets cleaner and more detailed. Now, if you want to try your hand at processing, you can enable expert mode. This allows the camera to save the original files, equivalent to RAW files, which are called FIT files in astro speak. Also, this telescope can save the accumulated stacked files into a TIFF format file. Both of these allow you to process them yourself, either by stacking and processing the FITS files, or just starting with an already stacked TIFF file and processing yourself with dedicated astrophotography software or with Photoshop. That's what I like to do, having some experience here. Here's a TIFF file I process myself versus the scope's final stacked image. If you want to try your first hand at processing, this is a great option. I spent several nights with the Vespera II X Edition at my house. I happen to live in a rural area right next to a dark sky preserve. Bortle 2 approximately, for those of you in the astro world. So really dark skies and no light pollution. Great for astrophotography. My first target was an easy one, large and relatively bright. Here it is in the sky, this little smudge. That's the Andromeda Galaxy. Now here's the image that the scope and the Singularity app pulled together from live stacking. Here's what I was able to get from stacking the original files and processing myself. If you have a skilled hand at processing, you can sometimes get more out of the data. Andromeda hardly fit in the field of view of the scope, so I used a great feature it has, mosaic mode. This allows you to select a wider field of view of the native field of view of the camera, and it will take multiple images and stitch a sort of panorama of the larger scene together. This also gives you up to a 24 megapixel image, so more resolution. Another large and fairly bright target is M45, or the Pleiades star cluster, also known as the Seven Sisters. I again used the mosaic mode and shot it wider than the native field of view. Love the dust clouds in space illuminated by these bright blue stars. By the way, that's it right here in the sky. Another one you have to shoot when winter rolls around in the northern hemisphere is the Orion Nebula. To the naked eye, you would see this as the sword hanging from Orion's belt. In Astro Talk, we call this Messier 42. Check out what it looks like with live stacking and only 45 seconds of exposure. 3 15-second shots. Crazy good. But there's a problem here. The core of this nebula is very bright, so bright that it gets blown out. So using the manual mode, I shot a second photo with a much shorter 3-second exposure at a lower gain and blended the core from the darker exposure with the other photo in Photoshop. Voila! So here's the image that the scope stacked on its own, and here's what I came with by stacking 2 sets of images. I also shot the California Nebula. This one was tougher as it's dimmer than the others and is in a field with lots of stars. Still very nice. And I need to mention, the Wi-Fi range on the scope is crazy. I had the scope set up on the end of my wharf for a clear view of the sky, and my house is 60 meters away, and I did all the controlling of the scope from inside my house. I just set the scope down on the end of my wharf and walked away. That's it. From my living room, I had great signal. I even control the scope from my bedroom. Unreal. You use 2.4 gigahertz for range, and when it's time to download your photos to your computer, switch it to 5 gigahertz to speed it up. And finally, I figured I'd try the scope for a long series of exposures. I plugged the scope into my small lithium-ion battery pack, and I set up the scope to photograph the Horsehead Nebula and the Flame Nebula as a mosaic to make sure that I caught it all. And then I set it to shoot, and I went to bed. 4 hours and 44 minutes, 1,139 images stacked. Amazing. If you're a beginner and want to experience real astrophotography but without the complexity, the Vespera II X Edition is amazing. Or if you're a more experienced photographer and want a grab-and-go setup, this is an excellent choice. And to shut down any talk that this isn't serious astrophotography stuff, you've got a great reputable sensor, a quadruplet scope, auto-focusing, live stacking, mosaic modes, a dew heater built in, fit and TIFF files available for your own processing. Great software interface and great images. Plus you can operate it over Wi-Fi from your home. What's not to like? A huge thank you to Vaonis for sponsoring today's video and for letting me try out the Vespera II X Edition in real life conditions. It was a blast and I was truly impressed. Makes a great travel companion for a trip to see your next solar eclipse too. You can get more details in the link below. And as we say in the astronomy world, as our customary farewell, clear skies everyone.